Last night, we actually saw the ascending greatness of Anthony Edwards and those Minnesota Timberwolves as they triumphed in Game 7 on the road against the Denver Nuggets. They overcame the biggest deficit in a Game 7 to come to that victory. They ended up winning 98-90 after being down 20 points at one point in that game. Anthony Edwards didn't have a stellar game himself offensively. Jamal Murray started out the game really hot offensively. Come in the second half, Anthony Edwards got that call. He picked up. They said, the buckets aren't falling, but them clamps are working. Go ahead and lock that man up. And he put Jamal Murray in prison. Now, admittedly, there were other people that ended up helping in that facets of the game, but all in all, Anthony Edwards was phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball when he needed to. He understood the assignment. He understood that he wasn't able to get things going on his own. Admittedly, he only put up 16 points. He shot 25% from the field. So tonight was not his night when it came to getting buckets. They were also double teaming him significantly most of the game, and that contributed to that. He did end up having a couple late game steals. One thing that most people won't end up talking about, though, is the fact that he was extremely efficient with the ball in his hands, not from a scoring perspective, but from a not turning the ball over perspective. As in this one, he ended up having 16 points. He shot 6 of 24 from the field, which is bad. I'm not disputing that. He was also 2 of 10 from 3. It's bad. I'm not disputing that. He was 2 of 2 from the free throw line, but he had 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and just a singular turnover. So while that 7-to-1 assist to turnover ratio didn't necessarily block out all the misses that he had, the worst thing that he could have done in this game is been just okay at defense. Been terrible shooting the ball and continued to turn the ball over a significant portion of the game, because then at that point he's barely playable. One person that had a worse game than him, probably from an offensive standpoint, was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was 0 of 6 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3, and just had an assist to put on his numbers, giving him a box score plus minus of a -11, which was the worst on the team. Naz Reid off the bench was efficient. He was 4 of 7 from the field, but he was 1 of 4 from 3. He did hit both of his free throws, had 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 blocks, which tied for a lead of the team with none other than Rudy Gobert. He ended up having 11 points total and had no turnovers. Kyle Anderson played a couple minutes at the very end, but that was really small work at best. Jaden McDaniels played a big, crucial role in this one. After last game scoring 21 points, today he came in and put up 23, shooting 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 4 from the three-point range, 6 of 7 from the free throw line. He also poured in 6 rebounds, 4 of which were offensive, which led his team. And then he also had 1 assist, 2 steals, and a block, and no turnovers, giving him the second highest box score plus minus at a positive 12. Karl-Anthony Towns was 8 of 14 from the field. He understood the assignment today. He did end up getting in foul trouble pretty early. He ended up dealing with 4 late in the game and then ended up picking up a 5th, but he managed to stay on the court, and Coach Finch and the rest of his teammates all trusted him to get the job done when he was on the court. He played 39 minutes in this one. He was stuck on Jokic most of the time. He didn't really get too many one-on-one matchup assignments with him. Usually there was help defense, whether it be Gobert, whether it be Naz Reid. There was a lot of guys that were really just stepping up and making sure things happened the way they needed to assist him. But for the most part, he was standing there tall and forcing the tough shots. Jokic today shot 10 threes. This is the most threes that he's taken since the first game of the series, in which I believe he took 9 if memory serves me right, and he shot poorly in that one. But if you can make Jokic live off of three-point range, knowing he's not a three-point shooting big, though he occasionally hits the immaculate circus shot at the end of a shot clock, you feel comfortable with that. And that's what they managed to do today. Offensively, Karl-Anthony Towns recognized that Anthony Edwards wasn't able to get things going. He was 6 of 24 today. So Karl-Anthony Towns came in. He said, you know what? Let me pick up the slack. Let me help out. Jaden McDaniels got his 7 for 10. Karl-Anthony Towns was 8 of 14. He was, though, 1 of 6 from 3, so it wasn't particularly great. As a team, they were 10 of 34, so they were 29.4% from 3, which was, abysmal. And honestly, over the entirety of the game, from a field goal standpoint, they were 31 of 79, so they were pretty freaking bad from shooting perspective. But this came down to a really grit and grind defensive matchup, and they ended up winning out. Admittedly, remember, Denver only scored 90 points in this one, and there was a very good reason for that. But paying attention to Rudy Gobert, he did end up having a turnaround fadeaway jumper from about 15 feet away from the rim that effectively told us that was the dagger for the game, to show that the Timberwolves were in control of this one. They were shooting poorly. Everybody was shooting poorly, but they said, we got this one in the bag. Because remember, Rudy Gobert was only 3 of 7 from the field today. He was 7 of 9 from the free throw line today, which is sneaky important because he does need to be able to hit those, because he's going to go to the line often. He ended up having 9 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He was tied with Karl-Anthony Towns for the most turnovers on the team with 3. Karl-Anthony Towns, despite his shooting woes, also was 6 for 6 from the free throw line, had 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and then 23 points total. The last piece that we didn't really talk too much about, but was effective because he played 38 and a half minutes, was Mike Conley. Now, he was 3 of 10 from the field today. He didn't hit any of his shots inside of the arc. He was 0 of 5, but outside the arc, he was 3 of 5. So he gave them points where he really needed them to. He was 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 8 rebounds. 8. Not a single starter had less than 6. The person with 6 was Jaden McDaniels. Mike Conley had 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and no turnovers, 10 points total, and a box score plus minus was the finest the team had to offer at a positive 14. So when you take that into context, you understand that these guys were not hitting a lot of their shots, but they were definitely there to try and clean them up. They had 11 total offensive rebounds, and they were doing their best to keep themselves in the game and keep themselves shooting better than really what Denver would have been allowing them to do. Looking down at the Nuggets side of things, though, they had a rough showing. There was 2 guys, 2 stars that went in tandem and tried to hammer things out. Jamal Murray had a really sparkling hot first half, but in the second half, the man was in prison. Anthony Edwards recognized that he wasn't hitting his own shots, and like I said earlier, he took that assignment. Jamal Murray ended the game after playing 42 and a half minutes, shooting 13 of 27 from the field, which is 48%. That's pretty good. But he was 4 of 12 from 3, 33%. He was 5 of 5 from the free throw line, had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, total of 35 points. But his box score plus minus was still a negative 8. Jokic suffered a similar fate because he played 46 and a half minutes. There's usually a portion of that late third quarter and sometimes that early fourth quarter where Jokic gets to go sit on the bench, get a little bit of rest, get a little bit of a breather so he can come out and give that final push in the fourth quarter. But last night, that did not happen, and Jokic was struggling because of it. He looked very sluggish. He looked very tired. He just didn't look like him normal self. And after everybody was hyping up the fact that he was standing there the entire fourth quarter just watching the game from his bench and said, oh, it's so scary, the Timberwolves didn't back down, and Anthony Edwards was not intimidated by the man. He sent him to go take care of his horses a little bit earlier than he had last year, surprisingly enough. Jokic, despite shooting that 13 of 28, which works out to 46.4%, he was 2 of 10 from 3. Make him shoot threes, you'll win the game effectively. He was 6 of 7 from the free throw line, though. He had 19 total rebounds. He was doing what he could up until he ran out of fuel. He had 6 offensive rebounds, which was the most by any player on either team. He had 7 assists, 1 block, and 3 turnovers, a total of 34 points, and his box score plus minus was a negative 9. You had the company of Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who all shot bad. Michael Porter was 3 of 12 from the field. He was 1 of 6 from 3. Aaron Gordon was 2 of 5 from the field. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was 2 of 7 from the field and 1 of 4 from 3. These guys didn't even attempt any free throws. You did have Michael Porter end up with 9 rebounds, though. You saw Aaron Gordon with 4. Ironically enough, all 4 of them were offensive. And you saw Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with 6 defensive rebounds himself. Aaron Gordon had 2 assists. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had 3. Pope had 2 steals, a block. There was a decent number of blocks for them, though. Michael Porter had 2, Aaron Gordon had 1, and they weren't extremely turnover prone, but there was just no help. All 3 of those starters combined for 16 points total, and that's something you can't really accept. They only ended up hitting a total of 7 field goal attempts together, and that was 7 of 24, which, if you're any good at math, it's horrible, to be quite honest with you. And then looking at the bench, you saw Justin Holiday play about 10 minutes and he did basically nothing. Christian Braun played 20 minutes and did effectively nothing. He was 1 of 3 from the field. He was 3 of 4 from the free throw line, had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, but that didn't change the tide of anything. And then Reggie Jackson played for about 5.5 minutes. So this was one that ended up just being the team that had it more in their hearts to get the job done. Both teams shot terrible from the field. Denver Nuggets shot a little bit better overall, going 34 for 83, which works out to 41%. But from 3, they were lower at 8 of 33, which works out to 24.2%. All in all, both teams fought really hard, and this was one of those really interesting back and forth matchups because across the entire 7 games, there was never really that many close matches that we got to see. This was the first one where we got to see a game decided by 10 points or less and got to see those guys really duke it out, see who could buy a stop, see who effectively wanted it more, and just trying to see who had the best energy about themselves to get a job done when a lot of other people felt like they were at their wits' end and that there was no extra fuel in the tank. When shots weren't falling, what could you do to make yourself a better player? What could you do to make yourself stand out on the court? And I think Anthony Edwards was the epitome of that tonight, particularly in the fact that he ended up being the individual that locked down Jamal Murray after Jamal Murray was piping hot in the first half. Essentially, if he didn't end up calming down Jamal Murray, this game and the comeback would have never gone in the favor of the Timberwolves. It would have been the Denver Nuggets because Jamal Murray would have kept sparking things up. Nikola Jokic would have still struggled a bit, but again, he ended up having 19 rebounds and 34 points, so what can you really get mad at the man for? He played 46 and a half minutes. He was off the court for a minute and a half. He did everything he could. If Jamal Murray doesn't get locked up though, or if any of the other role players ended up actually hitting some of their shots, then you're looking at an entirely different outcome for this game. But we're going to see the young Anthony Edwards take his team to an even bigger stage and now actually host in the Western Conference Finals for the first time in exactly 20 years to the day. All in all, I'm very impressed. I believe that Anthony Edwards has cemented himself, at least for this season right here, as the best shooting guard in the league, regardless of how the rest of the playoffs play out. And I hope that he does continue to play harder. And though the Dallas Mavericks are hot, I would give the edge to Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves because they have a knack for being an elite defensive team and still finding a way to score points when they're hard to come by. And the way Luka Doncic has been beat up, pounded, thrown all over the place, and the inconsistencies that Kyrie Irving has often come across at certain points in certain games, along with the inconsistent play of their role players, I don't trust their guys to be consistent enough to get the job done and to play elite defense in the way that is necessary to go ahead and lock down the Minnesota Timberwolves. So use this as my time capsule. We can look back. I'm going to go ahead and say Timberwolves in 6. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm always interested. How did you guys feel about how this matchup went between the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves? Not just Game 7, but the entirety of the series. Who do you think your MVPs were from both sides? And what do you hope to see going forward, as we are certain to see many more matchups between both rosters? With that being said, go ahead and smash that like button. It's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thanks for tuning in this video. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.